Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Vincent Lamte. I'm a software engineer, and in this series, I'll be taking you through server security essentials, essentially creating a some safe and secure practices you can use to, have an up and well running server. In the previous video, we spoke about creating servers. Servers are the home of your application, so you want to make sure that these are um, pretty well kept, safe, secure, And so, continuing expanding on that previous video, today we'll be talking about configuring non-root users. Okay. Now, sometimes if you create a new server, you might think, hey, let me just start deploying my applications. I've got a bunch of stuff I need to do. Let me just get this out of my mind. But you may want to pause for a bit and have think about some security considerations. How can you best secure your server before you start deploying stuff? And one of those considerations you might want to take a look at is configuring non-root users. So let's first talk about users. Who are users? Well, a user is an agent that can connect to your server and manage and interact with system resources. So in this case, John as a person can connect to our server as a user John. And then he can start executing commands like cat and echo and list directory and etc. And we have someone else who can connect to our server as a user root. And they can also start executing commands like cat, again, echo, and nano, things like that. So again, a user is an agent that can manage and interact with system resources. So why do we need a non-root users? Well, let's give you a scenario. We have John, our DevOps engineer. He connects to our server as user root, and then he wants to delete some directories. No harm, no foul. So he types in this command to remove the directory, but then he mistakenly puts a space in the directory path. So instead of rm/var/lib, he writes rm/space/var/lib, which essentially means delete my entire file system. Now, obviously, this is an accident, but as a root user, all of John's actions are permitted. He can essentially do whatever he wants. He will not get prompted for anything. So once John executes this command, that's it. His entire file system is gone. All his data, all his applications, essentially kaput. Now, if John was a non-root user in this case is any other user aside root. John, our again DevOps engineer, connects to our server as a user John. And if he tried to run that same command from earlier, he would get an error. They might say something like, hey, John does not have permission to do this, the user John. And if he wanted to even proceed, he'd have to consciously prepend his command with sudo. So like sudo rm the command. And now, although this doesn't fix the issue of him still deleting the file system, it drastically reduces the chances of that happening, because having to go through all of these extra blocks introduces friction, and friction introduces intentionality, which reduces accidents. So that's really the goal that we're trying to accomplish: reduce the risk of accidents happening on our server. So another reason for having non-root users is for audit and accountability. So let's say we have three engineers. We have John, Michael, and Heather. And let's say they all connect to our server as root, right? And while they're here, they're all executing a bunch of different commands. Command A, Command B, C, this and that, right? In our logs that we see who did what, everything shows that root is the one executing the commands. So it's difficult for us to trace back and say, actually, when it says root executed A, it actually means John executed A, and etc. So if everyone connects as root, it's difficult to see who did what and at what time. However, if everyone has their own user and then they connect to the server as that user, John connects as John, Michael as Mike, Heather as Heather, every single action that they do sort of gets tied to that user. So we'll know that John is the one that executed command A, Mike is the one that executed command B, Heather is the one that executed command C, etc., etc. So it's easy to know, what exactly is happening within the server, and it makes managing stuff much easier. So with all that said, why don't we go on to create some users? So I'm going to head over here, and this interface is the Amazon EC2 console interface from our earlier video, which is currently essentially showing the number of servers that we have running on AWS. So again, if you're unfamiliar on how to find this, once you log on to your Amazon account, AWS account, there's probably going to be a bunch of stuff here, but you can head over to this menu icon here, go to compute, and then go to EC2. And this will bring up a screen similar to this where you have resources, launching an instance, and etc. And resources will also give you this option here that says instances. And when you hit on that option, you'll be presented again with these servers that are currently running or even still on your account. So this is our account from yesterday. I'm going to select that and I'm going to try to connect to it. Now I'll be connecting to it via the EC2 Instance Connect. We haven't set up SSH yet. We'll do that in the coming videos, but I still want to start this again from scratch. And I know in the earlier one we have this default user called Ubuntu as well, but I'm going to connect as root because Ubuntu being provided as a user is sort of like Amazon specific. If you're using a different provider, let's say Hessner or Kintabo or DigitalOcean, you may not get a default non-root user. You might still have to connect as root. So I'm going to show, if you are as root, the stuff that you can do to set up your non-root user. So once I have my who I want to connect as, I'm going to hit connect. And then I will be brought onto this this page that is establishing connection, and then it's going to log me onto the system. So there's a bunch of stuff here, but then let me clear all this. If we look in our terminal, we'll see that we're connected as root at the hostname. So let's look again at how we can start creating our non-root users. So if you are on a general Linux system that's not Debian based, you can run the command sudo. You don't need to type in sudo in this case, but you can type in sudo since you're already root. But you can type in sudo user add and then the username. So let's say this is Heather, and let's do that. So we've created the user header, but we're still as root, etc. Now, just creating the user does not mean you're connected as that user. It just means that in the system, hey, create a space for Heather. If you want to see the number of the users on your system right now, you can run cat etc password, and that'll sort of give you all the users that we have. And at the bottom here, you'll see we have Heather. Now I know you can see John and Mike. That's because I already tested out a few things, so you can forget about these. But these are also other users that we currently have on the system, Ubuntu. By default, you'd probably not have any of this. You probably just have root at the top. So we have this is the root user, and these are mostly system user. You don't really have to worry about that right now. But this is Heather, and this is the user that we created. Now, if we look at home, ls-home, you'll see that we only have the user John and Ubuntu, but we don't have the user Heather. Now, ideally, every user that you create should have like their own home, should have like their own password, some skeleton files which are just configs for that user. They should have all that. But again, if you're running on a non-Debian based system, you'll have to create these manually. However, if you are on a Debian based system like Ubuntu, there's another command that you can run, and it'll set these up for you automatically, and that is sudo add user. And let's say this was what name? Nia or Nia, let's say Neo actually. And this is different from the earlier one, which is user add. I know it can be a bit confusing. It's just a switch of words. But then add user on Debian-based systems will do a lot of stuff for you automatically. It will create the home directory automatically. It will, create the skeleton files that your user needs to perform some actions. It will also ask you for a password, which is pretty cool. You don't have to do this manually as well. So if I hit enter on this, you'll see that, hey, we're adding a new user, creating some IDs, and then we're adding the new user Neo to the group Neo. It's creating the home directory, it's creating the skeleton files, etc., and it's adding a new password. So here we can type in our new password. I'm just going to say password. Let's give it a password as well. And then it'll ask you for some extra stuff. You can just hit enter to skip all that. It's not really necessary right now. And then it says it's added the user as well, Neo, to the group users. So if we look in our directory again, let me clear this, ls-home, you'll see now we have a folder called, let me do ls-l-home. Yes, we have a folder called Neo, which is going to be where Neo lives. This is like the folder, the home directory for Neo. And so that's how easily we can create users and all the extra configs on Debian-based systems. If we want to connect as Neo, you'll see that we've created the user Neo, but we're still acting as root. If we want to connect as the user Neo, we can just type in su Neo, and you'll see that our username changes from root to Neo. So now all the commands that we execute will be as Neo, and so just all of that. So yes, and you can even see that we're now running into like permission issues, and this is great because again, we're just trying to reduce our risk of error, so reducing the number of permissions that we have by default and things like that. So that is for creating a user. We also gave Neo a password. If we do want to change that password, we can just type in the command password Neo, and it says changing password for Neo. The current password, let's give it the current password, and let's give it a new password. Retype that, and yeah, now we have our new password created. So that's how we create users. If we want to connect to this user using our EC2 instance connect, again, we can come back here to my server demo, hit connect, and instead of Ubuntu or root, we can just say Neo. And if we hit connect, we establish that connection again. Let me clear all this. You'll see that now we're connected as Neo if we list where we currently are, and we're in our own home directory, home-neo. So in the next lesson, we'll be talking about user groups, some more things about permissions, and that'll sort of set us up for setting up SSH and things like that. So I hope you did find this helpful, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Ciao.